Good morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, September 15th. I'm going to try to do a quick video review of a video that was just posted yesterday of Senator Rand Paul clashing with Dr. Fauci on Capitol Hill. So I did watch this. It's only 6 minutes. I did watch this yesterday, not in a lot of detail. I think it was last night, actually. But I do want to review it, and we'll go through some commentary on this, and we'll see how this matches up with some other things that I've described recently, such as strategic stupidity, or I think the name is Potemkin stupidity. So Potemkin, if I'm saying that right, even I've read it a couple times, but I don't exactly have it in my mind right now because I had to travel last week, and I'm still kind of getting my land legs, so to speak. Let me look it up myself real quick if I have it right here, which apparently I don't, or I do. So the whole idea behind some of the essays or articles or blogs that I've written recently on stupidity is to help all of us understand stupidity at a better level, because we're exposed to so much stupidity these days. I think we really have to understand it. For example, I find value in being able to see things, identify them, describe them, and kind of put a label on them, especially if it's not my own label, because that provides, if I've read a description from someone else, for example, and then I can apply that label to something that I'm observing, then in a sense that provides some level of independent confirmation of my experience, right? Because I can say, gosh, that looks stupid, or that sounds stupid, or what he's saying is totally stupid. But if I can go beyond that and say, wow, he's fitting the mold of classic bullshit, according to Professor Harry Frankfurt. I think it's Harry, sometimes I think it's Henry, but anyway, Professor Frankfurt from Princeton. If it fits the mold that he's already described even 10 years ago, then that provides me some level of independent confirmation. So that's how I see it. The same thing is true. The same thing is true, but it's also practically identical to being able to describe logical fallacies. So, for example, the first level of identifying a logical fallacy is you say, this is bullshit, it doesn't make sense. That's where you start. But if you understand logical fallacies, then you of course can go to a deeper level and say, oh, well, it's this particular type of fallacy. And this is a known, recognized logical fallacy that you can find in textbooks. And again, that provides some independent confirmation, which helps you or helps me feel more confident in our evaluation of these things, rather than just saying it's bullshit, or he's lying, or man, that guy's a bullshitter, or whatever. You know, the kind of like the first level of perception. If you can go to another level of perception, I think that we all benefit from that, because it strengthens our conviction. It strengthens our conviction in what we're perceiving as being so offensive. So again, I'm looking for this series of articles on stupidity. Of course, I've saved all of them, but for some reason they're not right in front of me. Here it is. Here it is. Yeah, Potemkin stupidity. Potemkin stupidity. That's what I was looking for. Obviously it's an unusual word. It's not even English. I think it was actually, from Russia. So Potemkin. So Potemkin was a famous kind of politician person or diplomat or whatever, who created fake cities in Russia to make Russia look more populated and more successful and flourishing and etc. So he literally, according to the myth, he literally created a facade to give, I think it was like whoever his queen was at the time. I think it was Elizabeth, but that may not be correct. Let me just look it up real quick, see if I can find it in this article. Yeah, so Potemkin was a high-ranking Russian government official. Catherine the Great, so that makes more sense. So Catherine the Great. So he was kind of romantic with her and also kind of working for her, basically. And so in order to give her the impression that this particular region was better populated and more successful and flourishing and all this. He created a fake city, basically, just a facade, just the building faces. And that's so Potemkin came to mean a facade or a fake, faking it, you know. So Potemkin stupidity is stupidity. I just say strategic stupidity because obviously it's easier to understand. But Potemkin stupidity is a facade of stupidity to cover up a strategy behind it. Again, I just say strategic stupidity. But anyway, going back to what we're going to do right now, which is look at this video from Dr. Fauci or Fauci or whatever. I just call him Falsey because I think that's the better name for him. Let's take a look at this and see if it falls into these predetermined molds of stupidity. And I think that'll help us feel better about it and understand it better and feel more confident in our evaluation. Again, if we just say, oh, this is stupid, that only takes us so far. And I think that people have to, I guess maybe it's the combination of this. If I look at a video from Dr. Falsey and he's saying stuff that's stupid, and I say to myself or to someone else, man, that's just stupid or it's just bullshit, it kind of stays there at a very superficial, emotional, repulsive level. And as with any repulsive emotion, the first desire is to get rid of it. So if I say, oh man, he's just a bullshitter, or man, that's just bullshit, I'm describing it, but I'm also kind of discharging that emotion in a certain way that makes me, myself, want to get rid of it and change the topic. So, you know, the instinct, I think, would be to get rid of it and think of something else or change the topic, but not take action. And that's what gives these imbeciles their power, is because people get confused and repulsed by their stupidity. And that's part of the strategy. And I described that in some blogs on stupidity before I left. Part of the strategy of being so completely incompetent and stupid is that it does confuse people and it does make them repulsed from the experience of watching it. So they do change the topic, or they do ignore it, or they do attack each other because that's easier. So, you know, why haven't Americans absolutely demanded the resignation of Dr. Falsey? Why not? Because I think part of his strategy is he's so absolutely repulsive that people don't know how to handle it, and they end up just attacking each other. Oh, well, it's the damn liberals who put Falsey there, which isn't true. I mean, he's been there for 40 years or something like that. So, I mean, he's been there so long. You can't blame it on liberals or Democrats or Republicans or conservatives or red or blue or all that stuff. But I don't see anybody really advance. I don't see the nation, certainly, and that's the bigger point. I don't see the nation advancing beyond the dichotomy of Republican, Democrat, red, blue, liberal, conservative. They just keep attacking each other. They just keep attacking each other rather than day one demand his resignation and tomorrow your country will be better. But what I see is that no one gets beyond that. And I think part of the reason that no one gets beyond that is because they stay in that superficial, emotional, repulsive state rather than what I'm going to suggest here. And this is totally spontaneous, by the way. I've had coffee and one bite of breakfast. I'm just making this up as I go, but I think it's kind of good. If people can see things, hold on to it long enough to understand it, you know, intellectually or a slightly deeper level, and convince themselves that they're right, I think they would then be more likely to demand change. If people stay in that superficial, emotional, repulsive level, it's a hot biscuit or a hot potato, and you want to get rid of it, right? So I'll say he's a bullshitter. Man, let's go ride our bikes, or change the topic, or it's the damn liberals, or it's the damn Republicans, or whatever. But I don't see anybody, like I said, on a national level getting past the superficial bullshit to then initiate a legitimate change. I mean, we've been doing this pandemic thing for 2.5 years, and this guy still has a job. I mean, this is just absurd. That he's dominated the entire conversation. I'm going to say something else in just a moment, too. this guy, Falsey, has dominated the conversation in the United States, and therefore influencing Europe, influencing Canada, Australia, all of Latin America, because a lot of Latin American countries are just political puppets to the United States, because the United States has so much power traditionally has had so much power in Latin America. I mean, to the point of selecting and assassinating presidents. I mean, come on. So my point is this: a lot of other countries follow. I mean, not simply countries, entire continents follow whatever happens in the United States. So the fact that Falsey still has a job is impacting the entire globe through example or through political string pulling, you know. So I've said enough about that. I think I want to go on. I was going to add one more thing. Let's see if I can find out what it was. Not at this moment. Maybe when I'm doing the review, I'll catch up with that idea. But it was another idea that I wanted to add on to this. Maybe that was the idea, but I think it was different. Anyway, we're going to watch Dr. Falsey here. Oh yeah, here it is. I did catch it. That's not too bad. So the other thing, you'll notice that during the course of this pandemic bullshit, the elections at the World Health Organization were unopposed. So that guy, whatever his name is, I don't know his name, and I don't care what his name is, but you know who I'm talking about. The guy who's leading the World Health Organization, the biggest clusterfuck in modern history, supervised and directed by the World Health Organization. The guy who coordinated this clusterfuck was unopposed for his re-election. Are you absolutely kidding me? The guy's a joke. He's not a doctor. I think he's a PhD microbiologist. I could care less about a PhD microbiologist running the World Health Organization, because you already know the paradigm that they're raised in. You already know how he was molded to think if he's got a PhD in microbiology, which is what I think it is. And I don't really care, but I think it's microbiology, maybe it's immunology, I'm pretty sure microbiology. How in the hell can that organization claim to be legit when they had an unopposed election to guarantee the re-election of this guy who supervised the biggest clusterfuck of our lifetimes?
I want to be straight with you. There will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future. I repeat, there will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future.
So people assume we are just going back to the good old world which we had, and everything will be normal again in how we are used to normal, in the old fashion. This is, let's say, fiction. It will not happen.
A vaccine on its own will not end the pandemic.
How in the hell can that organization claim to be legit when they had an unopposed election to guarantee the re-election of this guy who supervised the biggest clusterfuck of our lifetimes? All right, we're going to watch Dr. Falsey here. And again, I need to wrap this up as soon as possible. It's 11:46 right now. I've got an important non-negotiable call at 12 o'clock, so I've got 13 minutes to finish this.
Flu for 14 days, she's as protected as anybody can be, because the best vaccination is to get infected yourself.
And so
So apparently what they're debating right now, Falsey versus Dr. Paul, they're both medical doctors, is that Falsey previously said that natural infection was at least as good as vaccination, which of course is true, and I'll explain why. I can explain why in a couple different ways, but let's explain why. Let's pretend that this is a bacteria or a virus or something like that. With a real infection, your immune system is exposed to the entire organism. I want to say two things about that. With a real infection, your immune system is exposed to the entire organism, and that provides access to all these different antigens and proteins to which your body can then supposedly make a protective antibody or immune response. But let's just say immune response, because antibodies against viral infections really don't matter that much. So, generally speaking. So, when your body is exposed to a natural, normal virus or a natural infection, your immune system can select through a random, it's actually a random selection process. VDJ, I think it's called VDJ recombination, but anyway, that was from 25 years ago. Your body can select, your immune system can select what it's going to attack, and it ends up attacking a lot of things to find out which one is the best target, right? So your immune system can attack here, it can attack here, it can attack here. With a vaccine, most commonly, and especially with these COVID vaccines, they've only created, let's say this is the spike protein. In this case, it would be the beak protein, but let's just say spike protein. They've created these vaccines that only provide the spike protein, so the immune system only sees this and supposedly only creates antibodies against this. Well, what would you rather have? Would you rather have an immune defense that's attacking this entire microorganism? Or would you rather only attack this? Well, I mean, it's just a different analogy, but I was going to say, arguably, the organism could survive even if you attack this. He could still probably survive. But obviously, if the immune system is exposed to the entire organism, it has more targets to hit rather than focusing on a single target, which was the biggest pharmacologic mistake. I mean, this is one of the biggest pharmaceutical blunders in the history of medicine, was that they created the vaccines to target only one protein, and the worst of all proteins, which is the spike protein. The normal immune response against coronavirus isn't the spike protein, it's other proteins that the immune system uses to defeat the virus. The other thing is this. With viral infections, this is a very important point that no one has made. No one's making this point. With a natural viral infection, you have a combination of pro-inflammatory signals with anti-inflammatory signals. So it grooms and matures the immune response in a different way. Let's just say it's a little more balanced, maybe. Let's just say it's a little more balanced. I guarantee you, if you study viral infections like I have, you'll see that a natural viral infection has a combination of pro-inflammatory signals with anti-inflammatory signals. So it's a more nuanced immune response and a more nuanced and balanced, let's say, physiologic response. With vaccines, when they only provide one pro-inflammatory signal, excuse me, the immune response that develops from that is imbalanced and certainly not nuanced. So those are my two important points with my model here. Microorganism. Natural infections provide various routes of access. Vaccines typically only provide limited access to very few antigens. In the case of the spike protein vaccines, it's only one protein. Meanwhile, the legitimate immune response wants to attack from all angles. And of course, the reasons are obvious. The other thing is, natural infections are not viral infections. Natural viral infections are always a combination of immunomodulation, pro-inflammatory with anti-inflammatory signals. So it develops a different immune response. I would argue more nuanced and more groomed and more mature, so to speak. Whereas, again, vaccines provide one intense pro-inflammatory signal, and that's not physiologically normal. As I've said before, protective antibodies against viral infections really don't mean that much. And I'm citing that from, I believe, 1954, the journal called Pediatrics, published by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So that's the citation on that. And so no one's even advancing the conversation to that level, which I actually consider somewhat basic science. So let's try to get into this falsy conversation. It's 11:52 right now. The time is 11:52, and I've got to be on a phone call in 8 minutes. So maybe I'll be late to my phone call, but let's go ahead and listen to this. Again, what they're debating right now, Dr. Rand is showing Dr. Falsey his own words, wherein he said that a natural infection was equal to or better than a vaccine.
She really has the flu. If she really has the flu, she definitely doesn't need a flu vaccine. if she really has the flu.
She should not get it again.
No, she doesn't need it because it's the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself.
This is an ongoing question, and we've had ever-evolving opinions from you, Dr. Fauci. Currently, antibody surveys show that 80% of children, approximately 80% of children, have had COVID, and yet there are no guidelines coming from you or anybody in the government to take into account their naturally acquired immunity. You seemed quite certain of yourself in 2004, but in 2022, there's a lot less certainty.
So he's making a very important point. If the purpose of vaccination is to create protective antibodies, which I think is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard in my life, if the purpose of these vaccines is to create so-called protective antibodies, then the people who have protective antibodies from a natural infection should be exempt from having these vaccines pushed into their bodies, especially kids. I mean, come on, kids are zero risk, practically. So he's making a brilliant and very clear and very legitimate point. And now we're going to watch Dr. Fauci use his social strategies to avoid the topic and confuse the topic and say, no, it wasn't this, it was something else. So let's see if we can collectively, or in this case, let's see if we can watch his behavior and provide a label to convince ourselves that we're right, that he's not simply a bullshitter, but he's a pre-programmed or predictable bullshitter. Let's see if that actually plays out.
Things that we also know after looking at this for 2 to 3 years is that the mortality from COVID is very similar, if not less, than influenza. So when we look at this, we wonder, why you seem to really embrace basic immunology back in 2004 and why you seem to reject it now.
Well, I don't reject basic immunology, Senator, and I have never denied that there is importance of the protection following infection. However,
so he's lying when he says that. So he has denied it because he hasn't included it in the official statements and positions of the programs that he's in charge of. So he's lying. So let's see. What are the best ways we could describe this? He's stating that he hasn't lied with words, but he has, by default, lied with his actions. So even if he hasn't come out and said that natural immunity doesn't matter, he's behaving as if natural immunity doesn't matter by not including this in the guidelines. So that was pretty good analysis. I'll take that. So he hasn't. He's trying to, and he's done this before. He's trying to be very literal, and he says, well, I haven't lied with words, but he has lied with his actions.
as we have said many times, and as has been validated by the authorization by the FDA through their committee and the recommendation by the CDC through their committee, that a vaccination following infection gives an added extra boost. And that film that you showed.
So he says that it provides a boost. Okay, well, that still doesn't justify the program. So he's saying now, so you'll notice he never answered directly Dr. Paul's concern. I mean, we're already on a different topic now. So he's saying that the vaccines can help, or now he's trying to say that the vaccines on top of a natural infection is even better. That may be mathematically correct, but the question becomes, is it clinically relevant, and is it worthy of being a national priority? I'm guessing it's not relevant, and I'm guessing it's also not worthy of being a priority. So a better approach would be to use, vitamin D for $3 a dose. That would be better than these, injections, I'm quite sure. So it's just a different route that we could be taking, but you'll notice he's limiting the conversation. His answer is going to be pro-vaccine. And that tells you that everything he says is going to be bullshit to support that conclusion.
Is really taken out of context. I believe that was when someone called in who had had a reaction to a vaccine and asked me
So again, I have to call bullshit on this. First of all, what he's saying right now, he himself did not contextualize in his response. So I don't know if the original conversation included that or not, but he didn't say that it was. He didn't say his decisions were based on that. He didn't say in the clip that was provided. He did not say there, if she's had an infection and she has an adverse response, then obviously she's not a candidate for vaccination. He didn't say that. He just said she's had a natural infection. She doesn't need the vaccine. So he, through human error or just being a normal dude or making a mistake or whatever, he didn't clarify that in his response, which was used by Dr. Paul, and I can't say if it was out of context or not. And I don't really care. Because that's not the major point. So he's backtracking again to try to look for any out that he can, because no one gives a damn about these kids and adults who are having adverse effects to these vaccines. And yet now he's saying, well, I was basing my decision on someone who had had an adverse effect from the vaccine. Well, why doesn't that matter now? So he's been caught twice by Dr. Paul for saying something previously which was actually logical, and now he's kind of all over the place, dancing around so that he can reach the conclusion that he wants to reach, which is he's going to push vaccines on everyone.
Through a telephone in the interview, if they should get vaccinated again. So it was in the context of someone who had a reaction. As a matter of fact, Reuters fact check looked at that and...
Reuters is irrelevant. I mean, they're totally bought out by corporate interests. So the fact that he's using a fact checker that's paid off by corporate interests to fact check his pro-corporate stance, completely irrelevant. And furthermore, I mean, it's kind of stupid. He's a doctor, and he's been the multi-decade director of the NIH, this aspect of it. So why in the hell would he use as justification something from Reuters? I mean, who cares? I mean, why would he shouldn't be referencing them.
Said Fauci's 2004 comments
Look how
do
nervous
not
he is.
contradict
Look at his handshake.
his pandemic stance.
Actually, words don't lie. If you look at the words behind me, we can go over them a little bit at a time. She doesn't need it because the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself.
It is true. It is true, Senator. It is a very potent way to protect.
So when you're trying to tell us that kids need a third or a fourth vaccine, are you including the variability or the variable of previous infection in the studies? No, you're not. Because when you have approved vaccines in recent times, and the committees that have approved it for children don't report anything on hospitalization or death or transmission. They only report that if you give them the jab, they'll make antibodies. And you can give kids hundreds of...
And these antibodies are just stupid. The COVID virus does not transmit in the blood. It transmits from cell to cell. So if you've got a bloodstream, I hate that word, bloodstream, but if you've got a bloodstream filled with antibodies, but the virus itself is transmitting from neighbor to neighbor. So let's say these are two epithelial cells. These are two epithelial cells. You've got a virus here that's going to transmit directly into the next cell. If the bloodstream here, again, I hate that word bloodstream. It just sounds so 1700s to me. But if you've got blood here that's filled with antibodies, they're never going to see the virus because COVID virus transmits from cell to cell, not via the blood. So this is another reason, on top of the reasons we've had for the past 50 years, that these protective antibodies, I mean, the whole thing is just a joke. It's a bad joke played on an ignorant public and a professional population of medical doctors who are often just as ignorant, because a lot of doctors don't know what I'm talking about, even though it's, right out of the books and right out of the journals. So let me see what I need to do right now. The time right now is 12:02, and I did agree to a phone call at 12 o'clock. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to pause this and then come back to it, because I don't want to leave that other person wondering what happened to our conversation. So I'm going to pause this right now, and I'll come back to it again. Right now, it's exactly 12:03, so let me get off of this, and I'll come back as soon as I can. Okay, so I'm back from trying to catch up with that phone call. Right now, the time is 12:06. We rescheduled the call for 12:55. So, again, I'm trying to get through this, but I also, of course, want to be thorough. So let's just see what we can do here. So we are going back now to this conversation between Dr. Paul and Dr. Falsey. Let's see what they continue to say here. I think we're good to go.
Of jabs, and they'll make antibodies every time, but that does not prove efficacy. Okay. So what you're doing is denying the very fundamental premise of immunology, that previous infection does provide some sort of immunity. It's not in any of your studies. Almost none of your studies from the CDC or from the government have the variable of whether or not you've been previously infected. So let's look at adults. I've had 3 infections. Should I get a 4th one? If you're going to measure whether I get a 4th one, you need a category that has a 4th one in it, and you need one that has nothing in it, no vaccine or the 4th vaccine. But you also need to know whether they've been infected. If you ignore whether they've been infected, you're ignoring a vaccine, basically, so you're ignoring a variable. So what you're giving us is this.
So I'm going to interrupt him just for a second there. I think he made a mistake. He said he's had 3 infections. I think he meant to say that he's had 3 vaccinations. But he's continuing to build the case that his basic point is that Dr. Falsey is being inconsistent with himself, but he's also being inconsistent with the known science and physiology of immunology and vaccines and infections. So you'll remember, those of you who have been reading my blog, pretty consistently, or at least you can go back. If you haven't seen everything, you can go back and look at this one. One of the things I said in one of my earlier posts when I was talking about strategies used by manipulative people, one of the key things to look for with them is inconsistency, because that is a signature of manipulation, but it's also a strategy of manipulation. So it's a signature of manipulation because basically these people are saying whatever the hell they want that serves them at the time, and that's a characteristic of people who are manipulative. So it's their signature, but it's also their strategy, because part of their strategy is to create confusion. Because if they can confuse you and get you to doubt yourself, that's called gaslighting, and that actually changes your brain function so that then you can't think clearly, so then they can go on and do whatever they want at a more rapid pace. So again, Dr. Falsey, every time, and I don't spend a lot of time, I actually try to ignore this whole topic to the extent that I can, because it's just so stupid. However, I also think that I can provide a good service by providing some level of analysis with what's going on here. So, what I had said earlier at the start of this video is, let's see if Dr. Falsey falls into his own hole, so to speak, and falls into these patterns that are easily predictable and definitively characteristic of manipulative behavior. Right now, every time he opens his mouth, he's falling into a hole that declares to you and declares to me that he's just a bullshitter, and he's going to say whatever he wants to push these vaccines. That's apparently his agenda, and that's why he's in power, apparently. So remember what I said recently when I was talking about stupidity and how it kind of works as a system. The stupidity system is set up to achieve goals contrary to what the goals should be. So this guy's job, Falsey's job, as head of the NIH section on immunology and allergy and infectious disease, his job should be to protect the health of Americans. But he's obviously not doing that job. But he's serving someone's interest, otherwise he wouldn't still have his office. So if he was a complete failure to the people who run the country, then they would kick him out. They'd get rid of him. They'd find some way to get rid of him. But the fact that he's been a complete failure to the American people, and the world population for that matter, as I mentioned before, because most countries follow what the US does, the fact that he can fail so miserably and still have his job tells you he's not failing. He's succeeding in achieving the goals of his paymasters.
You decry, and people decry, vaccine hesitancy. It's coming from the gobbledygook that you give us. You're not paying attention to the science. The very basic science is that previous infection provides a level of immunity. If you ignore that in your studies, if you don't present that in your committees, you're not being truthful or honest with us.
Senator, if I might respond, I have never, ever denied fundamental immunology. In fact,
See, again, this is the same thing I already described. He's doing it again. He's being literal with his words, but inconsistent with his actions. And I think what he does now is he's going to start saying, well, I'm not in charge of this committee, and I'm not in charge of the FDA, and I'm not in charge of the vaccine committee. Oh, come on. He's got enough power for enough time to totally turn this thing. But again, he's going to be literal. He's strategically literal when it serves him. But he's completely inconsistent and evasive beyond that narrow definition of being, oh yeah, I'm telling the truth, which is what he keeps saying. He says, I'm being consistent. He's being consistent within a very narrow example and definition of what consistency or truth-telling would be.
in fact, I wrote the chapter in the textbook of medicine.
Is it any
on
of
fundamental?
Who cares? So, for example, he just said that he wrote a textbook or he wrote a chapter within a textbook on I don't care. Medical textbooks commonly are written by people who are paid by drug companies to subtly push their products and paradigms within those books. So the fact that he wrote a section in a book, I don't care about that. But here's something that I do kind of care about. Dr. Falsey has published, of course, some peer-reviewed research. Whether he wrote it or it was written by a ghostwriter, I don't know, and we'll never know. But it has his name on it. In those articles, under his name, is mention of the importance of nutrition for its antiviral effect, and I think that this article was specific to HIV infection. And this was probably back in the 80s or something like that. So he has been aware, let's say for 30 or 40 years, he's been aware that nutrition plays a role in the inhibition or retardation of viral infections. So why, 30 or 40 years later, no one has mentioned this? No one at the government level is talking about nutrition, even though he knew about it and he authored the paper, or at least co-authored the paper. I kind of think he was the only author, but maybe he was the second author. It only had one or two authors. So he was either the primary or the secondary. So again, let's just watch how evasive he is.
Any of the guidelines,
immunology.
any of the guidelines for vaccines,
You know-
do any of the guidelines for vaccines from the government include previous infection as something to base your decision-making on with vaccines? Do any of the guidelines involve previous infection? That's why you're ignoring previous infection, because it doesn't involve any of the guidelines. And furthermore, we've been asking you, and you refuse to answer, whether anybody on the vaccine committees gets royalties from the pharmaceutical companies. I asked you last time, and what was your response? We don't have to tell you.
Right.
We've demanded them through free.
Yeah. So here, I'm gonna ask everybody a favor. I'm gonna ask everybody from the bottom of my heart. You can see this is a picture of a heart. I actually bought this in Porto, Portugal, the year before the pandemic. So I bought it directly from the artist himself. I think it's kind of ugly, but it is a heart. Anyway, I'm asking you from my heart. Here's a favor I need from Americans, and everybody else in the world for that matter, but especially Americans, because Americans just do this and they don't stop doing it. Stop fighting among each other for a year. If all Americans said to themselves for a year, we're not going to attack white people, we're not going to attack Latinos, we're not going to attack black people, we're not going to attack anybody else. We're not going to attack any ethnic group. We're not even going to say bad words to our friends about them. Because you know there's a lot of racism in the United States. And I grew up with some of that myself. I mean, I grew up receiving some of that, which is kind of odd. But I grew up watching my grandparents my grandparents were racist. I mean, I grew up seeing it. So I'm not saying it's everybody else. It was from my own family. I mean, I've seen it. But what I wish Americans would do for a year is stop talking about whites, blacks, Asians, Latinos, Muslims. Stop talking about it. Stop talking about Democrats and Republicans. Stop talking about conservatives and liberals, because most people who use those words don't even know what they mean. Stop talking about red and blue. Stop talking about that stupid stuff that people use to make themselves feel like they've got some control and understanding and power over things they've got no control and understanding or power over. It's just a scapegoat. Focus on the globalist agenda, and that's what's going to make your life better. Fighting with your neighbor isn't making your life better. Otherwise, America would be a great place, and we wouldn't have all these problems. Like the fact that we've got the most technologically advanced and richest and most resourceful and biggest country, arguably, in the world right now. And we have no mass transit infrastructure. So anyway, the point is, if Americans would for 6 months, or 3 months, if Americans for 3 months would stop fighting among each other and address directly this globalist, technocratic, pharmaceutical takeover of the government, focus on that for 3 months, and your life in your country and your society and your community and your family will forever be grateful and better off. You know? That's what I want to see happen.
Freedom of Information Act, and what have you said? We're not going to tell you.
Yeah, so look, so in this case, Rand is trying to hold Falsey accountable and saying, look, apparently you guys are being paid off by the drug companies because you're not even willing to state that that's not happening, which by default kind of makes it look like it is happening. And watch Falsey. He's going to be evasive again.
But I tell you this, when we get in charge, we're going to change the rules, and you will have to divulge where you get your royalties from what companies, and if anybody in the committee has a conflict of interest, we're going to learn about it. I promise you that.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to that, please?
May.
Okay, there are two aspects for what you said. You keep saying you approve, you do this, you do that. The committees that give the approval.
So here he is. He's being evasive again. He's being literally truthful within a context of being a complete fraud and mismanager of this whole thing.
Our FDA through their advisory committee. The committees that recommend are CDC through their advisory committee. And you
here's the deal. Falsey, is in charge of the NIH Department of Allergy and either in immunology or infectious diseases. He could easily, tomorrow, any day that he wanted to, he could have done this already. He could easily either author a paper or initiate primary research. I mean, he's in control of this. He's in control of this conversation through his position. He could easily author a paper or conduct the research to support the position that we need to optimize immune status and thereby optimize nutritional status of everyone in the United States, and that's a national security goal to protect the country. We need to have healthier citizens. To have healthier citizens, we have to provide them the nutrients that they have, that they need. Right now, you've got 60 to 80% of Americans are deficient in vitamin D, 30% deficient in zinc, and let's say at least 15% deficient in selenium. Those are all anti-inflammatory, antiviral nutrients. So he could have said that. I mean, he could say that. He could write that out on a text message next time he's on the commode. The point being, sorry, that was a little distasteful, but you know what I mean. He could have easily turned this thing around already with hardcore, known, proven facts. And he's chosen not to. To the consequence of the misallocation of billions of dollars in the United States, and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or globally, millions of lives.
Saying, I'm the one that's approving a vaccine.
I mean, this guy he's so evasive. He's so evasive. Now he's saying, look, I'm not in charge of all these committees. No, technically you're not. So again, he's being strictly truthful within a very narrow range. But he's got total dominating influence over these same groups, even if he's not sitting at the head of the table.
Based on certain data. So I don't really understand, with all due respect.
Yeah, no. I don't understand. That's part of strategic stupidity. That's part of Potemkin, if I'm saying it correctly. That's part of Potemkin. That's part of Potemkin stupidity, is pretending that you don't, or a person, pretending that they don't understand, and then using that as a virtue signal for false humility. It's exactly what he's doing. He's saying, I don't understand, I'm innocent, and I'm just doing the best I can here. That's the game he's trying to play, because that evokes confusion, inertia, lack of action, and also sympathy. So he's saying, I just don't know, or I just don't have that power. He's got all the power in the country to turn this thing around, and now he's saying, oh, I just don't understand. I'm going to rewind that just for the few seconds that it is.
I don't really understand.
I mean, it's so offensive. For him to say he doesn't understand, he understands everything that's going on here.
With all due respect, Senator.
Look at him. Oh, now he's virtue signaling again. Man, I'm just trying to be respectful, and I want to understand. That's what he's saying here. I mean, this is so horrible.
You're the one that said you would not reveal what companies gave you royalties, or what company gave the other scientists royalties.
Gotta move
That's
on.
what you told the committee.
Senator Paul,
Sir,
you gotta move on.
Could I please answer that?
Briefly,
You
yes.
keep asking committees. They're not my committees. They're the VRPAC committee for the FDA and the ACIP for the CDC. So I don't have any idea what goes on.
I mean, he's so offensively evasive. Listen to what he just said. I don't have any idea what goes on. He's the #1 man in the entire country on this topic. He sure as hell better understand what's going on. So again, he's pretending to be helpless. The offensiveness of that is that it's repulsive. People can't grab onto it in the moment, and a lot of people aren't going to study it and kind of analyze it. But again, his use of language, when people don't know or they don't understand, they're avoiding accountability, of course, and in a sense, their evasion is justified. Because if they really don't know and if they really don't understand, then they really can't be theoretically accountable, except for the fact that this guy's been in charge of this whole area for 30 years or whatever his term has been. So even his evasion is false. Obviously I was looking for a better word than that, but his attempt to be evasive on something where he is in charge, he is the czar, he is the king of this topic in this country, and therefore for most of the world, because other countries either follow the United States out of respect, or they don't have the resources to create these complex systems, so they assume that the United States is getting it right, or they're forced to, because the United States will force them to agree with American policy, or the United States will say, well, now you're threatening American interests and we need to put more troops in our military base that's in your backyard. I mean, that's how America has controlled politics in Latin America for decades. You can look it up. It's called, I think it was done by Teddy Wilson, one of the earlier presidents, but the strategy was called America's Backyard. You can look it up.
In the United States of the 19th century,
Manifest destiny was the widely held belief that American settlers were destined to expand across the whole continent. In 1904, President Theodore Roosevelt declared that the United States had the right to intervene in the internal affairs of Latin America. In his own words, this meant that if any South American country misbehaves, it should be spanked. All U.S. presidents that succeeded him have, in lesser or greater measure, continued to exercise their perceived right over a region often known as America's backyard.
So again, what happens in the United States, my point is, what happens in the United States influences a lot of the world. So this one jackass is really having a negative impact on a lot of things that are going on in the world. His evasion and deception and strategies are just so obvious that
they won't reveal, as well as you won't reveal.
Okay, we're gonna move on. We're over time. Senator Paul, you're over.
Arguably, these politicians are being paid off. The concern that we should all have is that they're being paid off by drug companies to push this vaccine agenda. The fuck? They're being paid off to push this vaccine agenda through conflict of interest. Oh, there it is. Sorry, I was looking for my recording, which didn't land where it usually does, and I thought maybe it had gotten lost. But I see now that it's not lost. So anyway, that's the quickest review I can provide. I know that I used a little bit of vernacular, common language, profanity, but some things warrant profanity. Why do we call profanity profanity? Why do we call bad language bad language? Because it's visceral and forceful and clear. And sometimes it's a mistake. You know, people have emotional responses and they get pissed off, and sometimes they're wrong. So I'm not saying that, you know, all profanity is somehow a signal of clarity. It's not. But in this case, I'm pretty clear. And you know, a lot of us are taught, and I've obviously thought about this a little bit previously, but a lot of us are taught from a young age to don't be angry, don't get emotional, right? That's because our parents and, you know, the school systems and the church systems that a lot of us are raised into, they want to keep us calm and keep us quiet and keep us controlled. Because if we were to get pissed off, we might change things. And that's why we have, a lot of us are, you know, raised into this social prohibition against emotion. You can have a limited happiness. So the four main emotions are happiness. It's glad, sad, mad, afraid, right? You can have a reasonable level of happiness. That's socially acceptable. But you're really not supposed to be angry. Mad, sad, glad, afraid. Anger, fear, no one really cares about it. Anger, you're supposed to ignore it or modulate it or get therapy for it. Happiness, you can be happy as long as it's controlled. Mad, sad. Sadness, you're supposed to be medicated for. So, you know, some people would argue that, you know, vitality, force, comes from health and access to emotions. And we're all kind of like taught to not access our emotions. And then we're raised in an obesogenic society that kind of deprives us of being healthy. So, you know, mental clarity, I'll summarize it with 3 points. Where does vitality and force come from? At least in my perception right now as I'm looking at my breakfast, which I'd like to eat. Where does force and vitality come from? It comes from health, which we're denied in many ways. It comes from mental clarity, which we're all denied in many ways. And it comes from access to emotions, which we're all supposed to deny, right? You're not supposed to be, a person isn't, in most societies, and I've lived in at least 3 different societies internationally. In most societies, you're only supposed to be a little bit happy, but you're not supposed to be sad. You need drugs. You're not supposed to be angry. You need therapy or some type of counseling or something. Mad, sad, glad, and fear, that has its own diagnostic category as well, along with the social anxiety drugs that go along with it. So, like, I'm just kind of making this up as I sit here, but I'm thinking, where does strength come from in a human being? Health, access to emotions, and access to mental clarity. I see this as bullshit. I see this as offensive. I've convinced myself that I'm right, and that could still be a mistake, but at least for this moment, I've convinced myself that I'm right by referencing other independent perspectives which fit this mold of what I'm seeing in front of me. So, based on that, I have to trust myself and move forward and take action. That's exactly what I see as being blocked in the society. Through distractions and miseducation and medicating people out of their emotions and making them sick and obese and out of shape through an obesogenic society, which is contrasted to, like, let's say the United States in the 60s and 70s, when physical education was part of the curriculum and people were rewarded for being fit and strong.
They had a classical sense going all the way back to the Greek era of what it took to move the body well, without injury, with mastery of movement and control.
Those of us who remember John Kennedy, he affected our lives dramatically. He had a vigor, he had a youth, he had an energy. He took La Sierra High School and made that the poster child of his program to make America a healthy place, because he understood that if America was healthy, physically healthy, it would be mentally, spiritually, emotionally, patriotically healthy.
I welcome this opportunity to speak to the people of America about a subject which I believe to be most important, and that is the subject of physical fitness. And I speak not only as President of the United States, but also as a parent of 2 children who I hope will grow up with those qualities of vigor and energy which we identify with the best of America. This should be a matter of concern to us all. A country is as strong, really, as its citizens. And I think that mental and physical health, mental and physical vigor, go hand in hand.
Ready up! Class attention! 5 sets, start on ready!
I hope that we will not find a day in the United States when all of us are spectators except for a few who are out on the field. I hope all Americans will be on the field. This is a subject which should be of interest to us all.
It is possible for young men to achieve difficult physical feats if they're motivated in the right direction.
And I hope when we have seen the astonishing results which we have seen, where we've been able in the short space of 2 and 3 months to change the physical habits and strength of our children, that this will spread to every school district in the United States. That all of us will participate, and in so doing will be better citizens and happier ones. This is a challenge for us all. Children, boys and girls, college students, mothers and fathers. And all of us, I think, should welcome it. I hope all of you will join in a great national effort to build a strong and better America through physical effort and through the contributions we can make by the drive and force we bring to our daily lives. Thank you.
Now we have the exact opposite of that. People are rewarded and protected for being obese and being out of shape. So I realize I'm bouncing around a bit, but that's because I'm about to go eat breakfast and balance myself out a bit, Right now my brain's like eating up all the glucose in the system, which isn't to, I don't mean to jokingly reinforced the paradigm of carbohydrate dependence, but anyway, that's how it just came out. So anyway, I think by now you understand what I'm trying to say about all this. So I'll post this video and maybe make a few comments when I go through the editing process. Sometimes I need to make a few corrections or clarifications or additions, because I can insert videos into this video and make it kind of cool. Okay, talk to you all later, and I'll be, I think I'll be home all day today, working on blogs and videos and articles and documents and drawings and things like that. So I will wrap this up for right now and get it on the internet as soon as I can. Thank you much.
A country is as strong really as its citizens. And I think that mental and physical health, mental and physical vigor go hand in hand.
It is possible for young men to achieve difficult physical feats if they're motivated in the right direction.
And I hope when we have seen the astonishing results which we have seen, where we've been able in the short space of 2 and 3 months to change the physical habits and strength of our children, that this will spread to every school district in the United States. That all of us will participate, and in so doing will be better citizens and happier ones.
I want to be straight with you. There will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future. I repeat, there will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future.
So people assume we are just going back to the good old world which we had, and everything will be normal again in how we are used to normal, in the old fashion. This is, let's say, fiction. It will not happen.
A vaccine on its own will not end the pandemic.